All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The 162 game Major League Baseball season is truly a marathon and it's not a sprint. And two teams that are a shining example of that are the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, both the Mets and Phillies made the playoffs last year, which included these longtime division rivals meeting in the postseason for the first time, with New York upsetting Philadelphia en route to the National League Championship Series. Now, coming into this season, both the Mets and the Phillies were once again expected to be postseason contenders, and it's looking like a real possibility. But which one of these NL East rivals has what it takes to win this division, and who's going to have to settle for a wild card berth? Now, after the 45-24 start to the season by the Mets, they finished the first half of the season going just 10-18, which included losing 10 out of 11 at one point. And with the Mets struggles, the Phillies were quickly able to close a 5 game gap in the NL East. And over the last 2 weeks, we've basically seen these two teams swapping the top spot in the division, with Philadelphia going into the break with a half-game lead over New York. Now, you look at both of these teams, they've had their good moments and they've had their bad moments. For the Mets, one of their biggest bugaboos so far, they have been struggling at the plate with men in scoring position. So far this season, New York is only hitting 230, and that is the second worst in the NL. The only team that is worse than the Mets with runners in scoring position this season is the Colorado Rockies. And of course, that's one team that you don't want to be in the same conversation with. The lack of depth in New York's lineup is really hurting them rather. They're very top heavy with the likes of Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, but they really have not been able to consistently get production from the bottom of their lineup, and that's a big thing right there. We saw Juan Soto start off very slow for the Mets, had a strong June. He's been pretty good so far in July, and if you're the Mets, you definitely need a big second half from number 22. Also, will Mark Vientos get going? I mean, he's been injured. He's been struggling this year. Vientos was a guy who hit 27 home runs for the Mets last year. He's a guy that they were counting on. So far this season, just six, and he just hasn't been there. But he did show signs over the weekend against the Kansas City Royals that maybe he's coming out of it. You look at this Mets starting rotation, they've had injuries. They just got Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas back. Can they keep them healthy? Can they keep Kodai Senga healthy? That's the $1 million question, because when he's pitching, he's on, but it's just a matter of, he'll pitch great for a couple of weeks and then he's injured. Okay. Losing Garrett Canning for the season, he's done with a torn Achilles. The Mets are going to need some more depth in their rotation. And on top of that, they're going to have to get more out of their starting pitchers when they're on the mound. I say this because as a whole, New York has the second best team ERA in the National League, but their 14 quality starts, their 14th rather, in quality starts out of 15 teams in the National League. And I think it's starting to really catch up with this bullpen. We've seen this bullpen for the Mets struggle a lot lately, and at the end of the day, they've been overused. So these Mets starting pitchers, they've got to find a way to consistently give their team at least 6 or 7 innings. Take some of that stress off of that bullpen, and learn how to go out there and stretch it a little bit more. On the flip side, for the Philadelphia Phillies, they just got Bryce Harper back. That's going to be big for them. I think that's going to give their lineup, which is already one of the deepest in the National League, even more depth and some momentum going into the second half of the season. You look at Kyle Schwarber, who, is flirting, and I think he's got more than a puncher's chance to join Ryan Howard as the only Phillies to hit at least 50 home runs in a season. Schwarber's got 30 here at the break, and this is probably one of, if not the best seasons that he has had so far in the bigs. You look at Philadelphia and their pitching. Of course, Zach Wheeler continues to be dominant for them. Aaron Nola was struggling. He's on the 60-day DL right now. He's just starting to throw for the Phillies, and if they can get him back, coming down the stretch, that's a huge shot in the arm, especially if Aaron Nola is going to look like the Aaron Nola of old. Both of these bullpens have struggled at times. The Phillies bullpen has 17 blown saves this season, and the Mets are right there with 16. Okay, you look at the huge splits for both of these teams as far as their home record in comparison to their road records. New York is 33 and 14 at home. They're just 22 and 28 on the road. Philadelphia is 30 and 16 at Citizens Bank, and then of course they are 25 and 55 on the road. So with these two teams who are so close, not just in proximity, okay, but so close in the standings. Uh, I think it's just going to be interesting to see which one blinks and who's going to make that move first prior to the trade deadline. I'm looking at the Mets, and of course, a lot of people are going to say, well, they need another bat. Are they going to go out there and get themselves another arm? I think David Stearns, the Mets president of baseball ops, is looking to see, hey, can we first get Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, and Kodai Senga back into a rhythm in the starting rotation before he sits up there and decides, okay, do we go out there and get another arm? You can never have enough arms in the bullpen. Okay, especially if you have eyes on trying to get to October. So I think that's going to be a big thing for them. And again, I think with this Mets lineup, so many of the guys, the young guys that they were counting on this season have not delivered. Mark Vientos has not delivered. We've seen Francisco Alvarez, the young catcher, be sent down to the minors. Luis Angel Acuna has been up and down between the big club as well as the minors. Okay, they're starting to get stuff from Ronnie Mauricio. They're starting to get stuff from Brett Beatty. Of course, injuries in the outfield. Jesse Winker just came back. He's hurt. Jose Siri, who they picked up from the Tampa Bay Rays, he's been injured with the leg injury for a bulk of the season. It's meant more playing time for Tyrone Taylor. Tyrone Taylor, and this is no disrespect to him, he's a platoon guy. He's somebody you bring in for his defense, but at the end of the day, he's not an everyday center fielder for the Mets. So I think these are things that we got to look at. For the Phillies, again, they're definitely going to go out there and they're going to need some help for their bullpen. But with this expanded postseason, and I cannot say this enough, you know, teams are a little bit more reluctant as in comparison to what they've been in the past, as far as parting with guys, because they some more teams feel like they got a shot to get to the postseason. So with that said, I think the Phillies are going to go out there and try to get themselves another, or at least one or two more arms for their bullpen. But like I said, it's going to be interesting to see which of these teams blinks first in regards to making some upgrades. So you look at it like this: can we expect to see both of these clubs continue to swap the division lead in the National League East? Absolutely. I truly think it's going to be a back and forth affair between the Mets and the Phillies for the top spot in the division. And honestly, this division title could possibly come down to the last week of the season. All right. I think both of these teams can be very hot and cold at times. We've seen that so far from them this season. And I think as this season is playing out, okay, and you use the word parity, there's nobody who has really stepped out in either league, in my opinion, and shown, hey, the World Series is going to go through them. I think we've seen the highest of highs from some contenders, and I also believe that we've seen some low points. When it's all said and done, I do believe that the Mets and Phillies will continue to go back and forth. I cannot say this enough, and I'm going to probably sound like a broken record with this because I've said this multiple times in the past. I really wish that the MLB would go back to having divisional foes play each other 19 times a year in comparison to just 13. They've taken away two series basically to have everybody in every league play each other. And I think you look at a tight race like this between the Mets and Phillies, I think it would be better for baseball when you have more games between the division rivals, especially two division rivals like the Mets and Phillies, where there's simply no love lost. But nonetheless, they only play each other for two series over the second half of the season. So it's going to put so much importance on both of those games, or both of those series rather, for both of these teams to go out there and take care of their business. But nonetheless, I think both of these teams will continue to swap the top spot. I do believe both of them have the potential to get to October, and I think both of these teams have the potential to get to October and make some noise right there. It's not time yet for scoreboard watching between either one of these teams. We're just here in mid-July, but nonetheless, I think things are really starting to get interesting. Two flawed teams, in my opinion, who both have a lot of potential for and to a room rather for improvement. And I think we're going to see this because I think both of these clubs have the potential to get hot for a couple of weeks and really get going and stretching things out. But nonetheless, somebody's got to win this division. I think it's going to be a coin flip. I think the loser of this division has a pretty good chance to get to the postseason. Nonetheless, you got some strong contenders for those wild card spots in the NL West in the form of the Giants and Padres, and then of course you look at the central between the Cubs, Brewers, and Cardinals. But nonetheless, the Mets and Phillies are going to continue to slug this thing out. So here at the break, it's been back and forth in the first half of the season between the Mets and Phillies. I think that trend continues between both of these teams in the NL East who are trying to slug it out for that top spot. So let's see over the second half of the season whether it's going to be New York or Philadelphia who's able to dig down and do what it takes to win the NL East. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do. Please feel free to like this edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast, as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365, and you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.